smiling though.
Close for comfort there at the end, Chris.
Yeah, it did. Look, it was a pretty stressful night for us because we thought that a lot of things were going well for us. We had control of the game, but we just kept letting them back in, and we know how dangerous they can be, particularly through the midfield. Some of their guys in there are genuine young stars. It just felt like, without going into detail, it just felt like we had problem after problem in the game, a few guys that were hobbling a little bit. And so in that context, it's nice when you can find a way, because it certainly wasn't a case of us playing our best footy and just being too good for them in the end. It felt like it was a grind.
So what do you think won it for you in the end?
I thought our senior players really stood up late. In particular, I thought Dangerfield was great in the last quarter, and Stewart behind the ball. But yeah, I'm sitting here now not thinking that we had 6 or 8 players that really dominated the game. It was one of those where we just needed everyone to do their bit in the right moment, even though no one was really turning it on. And conversely, I thought they had a couple that were pretty hot.
Bit of a glimpse into the future of what your forward line might look like. Ollie Henry was pretty incredible in that first half.
Yeah, he was dynamic. I'm probably being a bit harsh on Ollie because he was probably the most influential player on the ground.
Probably fitting he handballed that last goal. He set up that last goal with the slick handball, so
yeah,
quite fitting.
Yeah, and I don't think that's a bad way to describe it, that without Hawkins, our forward line was always going to look a little bit different. Cameron hasn't been able to get back to his best just yet, but I thought there were really good signs there. We're optimistic that he's building to the point where he can play his best footy in the remaining home and away games. But there's no doubt that Ollie Henry is going to be an important part of that. He gave us a look we haven't had for a long time.
Did you think that was Cameron's best game since the concussion? You think he's on the right path?
Probably. Yeah, I'd have to go back and think about it a little bit more, but he's just had a lack of continuity all year, it feels like, and I reckon his first contest back, he got a bad corky, and it tends to be a bit that way. You have an issue, and it's amazing how often he got a cork in exactly the same spot the next game as well. So he's just, for various reasons, one, the obvious injury ones, but two, just a lack of continuity with training's made it a little bit difficult for him. But last week he had the shots. Like, I think, to my recollection, three-quarter time he had 1-6, and if that's 6-1, we'd all be saying he had a great game. So I think it is a bit of a fine line, and even now he's taking some shots that we would normally sit back and think he's just going to knock that over. And it's not quite happening for him. But yeah, I think it's probably his best game, but he can play a whole lot better than that, and I'm confident that could happen next week.
Cut you off.
That's right.
Asava also looked almost unbeatable tonight. He was a real force down back.
Yeah, it was great to have him back. He was great in the air. I'm really optimistic around what Asava can be for us, and I've been clear, I reckon, from almost the day he was drafted, around my optimism with him. I've always rated him. I've got high hopes of what he can be, and I'm looking forward to watching it very closely.
And you said there were a few players hobbling. Anything we should be concerned about there?
Oh, well, the obvious one was Jack Henry. In the end, we just subbed him off. He just had his foot stood on. He's had some issues with his foot, but this is on the other side. So the feedback to me is they're not worried about anything serious. It was just really limiting his movement. Rowan had a little bit of an issue there as well. There are a few others that just have had issues that have lingered. That I think if you surveyed all the teams around the comp in round 21 and they were honest with you, they'd talk about quite a few of the guys that are just carrying little niggles, and it just felt like it all came at once for us tonight. So again, it was nice. Sometimes you just got to find a way to win when you can't beat them with brilliance, and it's hard to be brilliant. Jeremy is an example when you're just less than your best physically.
Did you feel like Port Adelaide had the momentum at three-quarter time?
Probably, but only because they kicked those 3 quick goals early in the third quarter, and it was a little reminiscent of the last time we played them over in Adelaide, where we thought we had control of the game for most of it, and they just took it away from us in a 20-minute period. So it was important for us to stand up in that moment. Scores were level, point the difference at three-quarter time. Yeah, I mean, I do believe in momentum. It's hard to kind of define, but not necessarily after a quarter break. So, you know, early on, did they kick the first one? I think they did. So they would have felt it, but our eyes weren't telling us that in the box. We thought our last quarter was one where we had control of the game.
Brian Myers said after the game that sort of went in basically thinking that every game from here you've got to treat like a final. Is that a theme that you've sort of had to run with this week?
Not really, but we have asked the individuals to think about the stuff that motivates them. And clearly that's sort of the thinking for Grind. My view is that some guys thrive on that and other guys can get a bit daunted by the pressure and look too far ahead. My preference is to be a little bit more in the moment, look around the competition. It's just tight, and anything can happen if you take your opportunities. I'm not sure that we need to win everyone from here, but it's pretty close. It's probably a good mindset to be in, isn't it? Like, we need to win the next game we play.